to 5 o'clock today because it was, they moved it to 5 o'clock today because we were supposed to have a city planning commission meeting at 5:30. But then they canceled that meeting. But this was already set up at 5.
Is Alicia going to be joining us?
I have no idea. She said she was, but I don't know.
Mayor, by chance, do you know if Alicia's around?
She's coming.
Okay.
Okay, she is, okay.
Yeah, she's running a little late. She just texted me.
We'll get a few more minutes later on Alicia.
Yeah.
She had something going on today because she was busy earlier this afternoon too, so I don't know.
Okay. All right, just give us a few more minutes. Moments, please, and we'll get things going.
That's what I do, give her a few minutes, she'll.
As we wait on Alicia here and before we open the meeting, I want to remind everyone that if you guys wish to speak, that you guys must sign the list over here on the podium. And just, be mindful of what we say, keep things respectful. Don't look like we have a lot of people here, so we should, have enough time to say what you guys need to say. Perfect timing.
Something like that. Sorry.
No problem.
It's been a day.
All right, we'll go ahead and get things going, and we'll go ahead and call this special meeting for April 23rd, 2025 to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mike Nichols.
Here.
Scott Highlander.
Here.
Charles Bates.
Here.
Sam Payne.
Here.
Isaac Chavez.
Here. All right, moving forward, we will look to approve the minutes from April 9th. We will go ahead and open a motion to the board.
I'll make that motion. We approve the minutes from April 9th.
Second. I have a first and a second. Can we get roll call, please?
Mike Nichols.
Here.
Scott Highlander.
Yes.
Charles Bates.
Yes.
Sam Payne.
Yes.
Isaac Chavez.
Abstain. All right, moving forward, before we get to these petitions, I just want to double check that we have no conflict of interest, that you guys were not contacted before for any petitions being heard tonight. Is that correct? All right, moving forward, we'll take a look at new business. We will have the public hearing for docket 2025-006. The petitioner is Logix Realty LLC by Fagrade Drinker, Biddle and Wreath LLP, requesting a special exception to build a data center in an industrial zoned district. Mr. Don Stock, can we please have the staff report presented?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the BZA. I'm not going to read the entirety of the site characteristics. This will be all documented in the minutes, but we will read a little bit of them. The site characteristics for the West County Road 0 North, South, Frankfort, Indiana is a part of Section 6, Township 21 North, Range 1, west of the 2nd Principal Meridian in Washington Township, Clinton County, Indiana, more commonly known as West County Road 0 Northwest in Frankfort, Indiana. The petitioners request a special exception for the approval of a data processing in an industrial zone area and a developmental standard variance as in the impervious surface ratio is over the maximum amount of 50%. In the Unified Development Ordinance reference, Land Use Table Appendix A 9.27 Data Center Special Exception in an Industrial Zone, and in Section 304 District Performance Standards Table B Light Industrial 0.50 Impervious Surface Ratio %. The zoning for this property is industrial, and in the special exception from cases arising within their territorial jurisdiction, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall approve or deny all special exceptions from the terms of the zoning ordinance, but only in the classes of case or in a particular situation specified in the zoning ordinance. The board may impose reasonable conditions and or comments pursuant to IC Code 3674 1015. On the special exception shall be approved under this section if, after a public hearing, the board makes findings of facts in writing that the proposed use conforms to the district's provision in which it will be located and all general regulations of this ordinances. As you have the findings and facts in front of you, we made copies of the development standards that this data center will have. It meets all the requirements except for those that were coming before you as a variance of standard on the impervious surface ratio. They do meet all the requirements for the minimum front yard, side yard, rear yard, distance between structures. This project will have a 62% impervious surface ratio with a retention pond. And I should have made that correction. I'm not for sure if a retention pond's going in, but they have, as we'll continue through this findings, you'll see that they have several stormwater areas that they're looking to be able to contain the water in. That is over the 50% requirement of the industrial zone. They will also meet the requirements for landscaping buffering. 2, the proposed use shall not involve any elements or cause any conditions that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to any other property or persons and shall comply with the performance standards herein. The proposed data processing center will not involve any element or cause any conditions that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to any other property or person and shall comply with all the performance standards herein. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so that the relationship of its building and grounds, adjacent building, and properties does not impair health, safety, general welfare, or comfort and does not adversely affect the values adjacent property. The data processing center will be landscaped. It'll be buffered along the front of the property and between both active businesses and on the east and west ends of the property as required by Table C. Required buffered yards on page M12 of the Unified Development Ordinance. The owners will be required to comply with illustration 5 on page M29. The proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect that is consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood and will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding properties for uses already legally permitted in the district. Surrounding this property lot are 2 businesses and 1 industrial business, adding a data center that will meet all the required building elements, and adding off-street parking and sidewalks will be legally permitted in this district. The proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movements on adjacent streets. This project has 3 entrances off of North County Road 300 West and 3 entrances off County Road 0 North South. This project will be in phases and will be a gated community. You could have 1 entry off of both county roads and the other 4 entries could be gated. Not saying that they will, but they could be gated. The proposed use has taken or will take adequate measures to provide utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities. This property will have 5 stormwater retention areas for stormwater runoff and a possible wetland area. This will allow for no water run off the property that is not being controlled and will have its own electric substation along with all other utilities that are necessary for the data processing center. Before we move to 7, I do want to say that this is outside of the West State Road 28 overlay district, so they don't have to comply to any of those regulations. But they will have to go before the airport board as the airport area they will be within that area. So they'll need to go to the airport board, especially if they are going to end up putting in any type of a retention facility that could hold water. So they'll have to go before the airport board to get their okay on those. The proposed use shall promote the objectives of this ordinance and shall be consistent with the City of Frankfort's comprehensive plan. The UDO requires that the data centers that are placed in an industrial zone be approved by special exception. This industrial will hire 250 employees. The 2035 comprehensive plan in Part 204, Community Economic Development states that the purpose of economic development is to provide for a self-sustaining community. Economic development goals assist in prioritizing various projects to determine which are of maximum benefit and minimum risk. They are embodied in the growth of jobs and income. Now for the developmental standards. The request said petitioner is requesting a developmental standard variance for approval of the impervious surface, which is over the maximum amount of 50%. And 304 district performance standards in the UDO Table B light industrial 0.5 impervious surface ratio percent is what is allowed. In 203.12, the variance development standards from cases arising within their territorial jurisdiction. The Board of Zoning Appeals shall approve or deny all developmental standards such as height, bulk, or area from the terms of the zoning ordinance. The board may impose reasonable conditions and or comments pursuant to IC 3674-1015. A variance may be approved under this section if, after a public hearing, the board makes findings of facts in writing that, one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Allowing for the variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare, as this project will have up to 5 stormwater management areas and a possible wetland area. All stormwaters will stay on the property and could be metered out in a controllable way. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in any substantially adverse manner. Again, granting this variance will not affect the adjacent property, as the 5 stormwater management areas will contain the stormwater from going on to adjacent properties. The strict applications of the terms of zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. The strict application could make this a smaller project, and it could reduce the number of employees, and it could cause this project not to move forward. Our recommendation is that the special exception and the developmental standards should be approved subject to the findings of facts in this staff report. As you can well know, the gentlemen are here to show a PowerPoint presentation and to be able to answer any questions that pertain to the special exception and developmental standards. But before we head there, if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer them now.
Don, looking at, to ask you, looking at number 4, you talk about the proposal shall produce a total environmental effect that is consistent with and not harmful to the environment or the neighborhood. What do you consider the neighborhood?
I consider the neighborhood ConAgra, and I consider the neighborhood both the small businesses that are along County Road 0 Northwest, and then you also have to look at the farm ground that surrounds the property.
Number 2, where it says the proposed use shall not involve any element or cause of condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to any other property or persons, and shall comply with the affirmative standard. Who are these people? Whose property and whose persons are we talking about?
Maybe it would be the same format. So it would be ConAgra. It would be, I'm not for sure, the small businesses that are along County Road 0 Northwest. There are 2 small businesses there. And then again, you're talking about the farm ground that surrounds the east and northeast sections of the property.
Okay, so I have a question then. I think it involves both of those things, because I was thinking in larger terms than the next door neighbor or whatever.
Sure.
How much power is, and maybe it'll take these gentlemen to answer this, how much power does this development require? Do we have that much power? Will that power affect the rest of us? Will it raise our utility rates? The power, I'm talking about electrical power right now. Will it raise our utility rates? Will it reduce will it brown out the community, to be an extreme example? Would it reduce the power available to the rest of the industrial park?
As far as what our special exception is concerned, that is not on our list of concerns. Our list of concerns is, will it have its utilities in place for this project? And the answer to that is yes, it will. It'll have the utilities that are required for the project. These gentlemen will maybe be able to answer that as far as the amount of usage, and maybe even Mr. Corey, the utility manager, would be able to answer that. But I don't think that should have an effect on whether or not the special exception gets passed.
Another question, is this, and this is all along the same line here, is this unit, these things going to be water-cooled or air-cooled?
I don't know that either, and once again, I don't know if that is a question of concern for the special exception. I'll lean to you, Miss Attorney.
Generally speaking, for a special exception, you need to consider the findings of fact that Don laid out, those different elements, specific things like how they're going to run their business or how they're going to operate their business, unless it is injurious to the public health and well-being, wouldn't be something that you would need to consider tonight.
If the company uses so much water that it draws down our aquifer, isn't that injurious to the whole community?
Yes, I think though, and Todd may be able to speak to this more than I can, but I think to run down our aquifer, you would have to use quite a lot of water, and I don't know that even cooling those would use that much. Am I correct, Todd, in that assessment?
You are correct, and just so that you know, right now we have the capability of pumping 9 million gallons of water a day from our facility that we have. And at this present time, we're pumping about 4.6 million. So we still have over 4 million gallons that we can pump with what we are the equipment in the process that we have.
So how much water is your place going to need?
Yeah, you want me to answer that separately from the presentation? I mean, we.
Okay, well, yeah, you can wait till the presentation. Okay.
Yeah, I can address that.
Okay, and the other thing that is not addressed here, and I think it would affect either 2 or 4. How much noise does the facility make? I've done it since I was notified of this operation last Wednesday or Tuesday. I've done some research, and it's recorded, and I have the information. Data centers generate about 65 decibels of sound, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How much is you guys doing that much?
No, I can.
How about let's do this.
Okay.
Let's let them do their presentation, and maybe they'll be able to answer some of these questions before you close the hearing. Okay?
Sure.
Let's do that.
Okay, at this time, we'll have the petitioner speak.
Yep, thank you. Do I need to sign anything to speak or?
No, go
Okay,
ahead.
good. And I will answer your 3 questions there on the.
If you wouldn't mind just stating your name, please.
Doug Swain. Okay. Should be somewhere up there. So thank you all, and thank you to Don and the BZA for holding this special meeting for us this evening. We really appreciate that and that accommodation. Just to kind of run through this a little bit, and I can certainly answer that question and any other ones that you have. I'm with a company called Logistics Property Group. We are managing this process for Logix Realty. And our company is really involved in land development for data centers. So we identify land that we think would be conducive and well-positioned for data centers, and we do all the things required to tee this up and to work with the data center users and operators that will come in and eventually acquire and construct the facility. Prior to this, I've had about 30 years of experience within this area and in this region, developing primarily industrial buildings throughout Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So very familiar with the areas kind of in this Midwestern part of the country. This is the, that was included in your binder. This is the proposed layout of the site that we are proposing. Don touched upon a lot of the aspects of this. 7 building development, just a little, approximately 1.2 million square feet of developable space, IT space. This represents really a $300 million real property investment. So just really the core and shell, if you think about the core and shell being similar to what an industrial development would be without any of the interior, you know, we're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million of investment there. The inside, which is where all the data center will be housed, is really $1.4 billion of personal property investment. This is racks, this is servers, this is other equipment that'll be in the facility itself housed. So these are sophisticated buildings. I would tell you that if you're looking at these, and I'll touch upon some other aspects of it later as well, this really is almost, I look at this as saying these are the office buildings of the 20th century. I mean, these are what they're housing in here, what we're doing in here is really something that's pretty incredible as you look at what's going on in the economy and what's going on in the world. You know, these are, you know, as you read probably about the office market, and I use office because a lot of communities over the years have always wanted to spur office investment and office development, primarily to get the employees. These are the employees. These are engineers, they're IT consultants, they're higher paid labor. These are the people that will be working, you know, in these facilities.
Before you go from that, to address Mike's point, just point out Andy Baroker with Bakery Drinker, for the record, to point out, Mike, sort of what the surrounding neighborhood is. Mike, in the upper right-hand side of that slide, that's the railroad, right? So that's really the buffer from any residential or any other farming around there. To the left of that slide is ConAgra, right? Then you have State Road 28 at the bottom. So, you know, you see some businesses in white. All those are businesses. They're not homes. But just in connection with impact to the neighborhood, that railroad to the north really buffers. Don talked about the adjacent farm ground. So that's a railroad that's elevated and it's sort of a natural buffer for anybody to the north.
And let me address those things in reverse order. So the last one you mentioned was the noise. So some of the older data centers, and if you really think of like the crypto mining data centers, those were the ones that were especially noisy. A lot of those were in buildings that were older buildings or they were retrofitted buildings. They weren't really designed to have the type of computers and things in there that were, you know, generating this type of noise. These buildings and these racks and these systems are completely different than what you see there. So these are quiet facilities. I don't know the decibel level off the top of my head, but generally we have not had any complaints with these newer purposely built AI data centers with regard to the noise. Now there are some backup generation, you know, things that are, you know, associated with these that get fired up, you know, for 30 minutes from time to time to make sure that they're still operational. We have even on some of the other designs we have done, we have shielded those with walls. But I would tell you that, especially in this context, it's not going to be a noise level that's going to be bothersome to people in the community.
Is this place air cooled or water cooled?
I would anticipate that they are water cooled. They may have some component of air cooled because of the where we are in the country and the climate, but usually those are the smaller ones. So these I would anticipate would be water cooled. The water systems that they are developing, they continually change and they're continually getting more efficient. We anticipate though, as I've told Todd, that this would use, it would be safe to say that this would consume about 1 million gallons of water a day. And we won't know exactly what the water consumption will be until we get the user, finalize all the discussions with our potential user and determine what type of system that they'll be using with this particular buildings, but that's kind of generally what I would suspect. Could be a little more than that, but that's what I would guesstimate would be that water usage. And then in terms of the power, again, Todd could speak to this. What we've discussed with them is bringing on capacity that's currently not being used that will come down from the substation that's up north of ConAgra. So this shouldn't, in terms of, if you're thinking, you know, take consumption from other users, and Todd could probably answer this a little bit better than I can, but it shouldn't, you know, we're using capacity that's not being used currently, so there shouldn't be.
We have that much unused, because you guys use a huge capacity, right?
It's a large capacity, but I'll maybe let Todd speak to that. He would probably answer or speak to that a little better than I could.
There is just off that screen, back behind what they're calling the wetlands up there, I believe is how you have that. There is a substation there that is owned by Duke, IMPA, who we purchase our power from, in Wabash Valley. Presently, we're drawing some of the power off of there, but when this got started, we checked into it. They have over 230 megawatts of power that's not being utilized at that substation. So for us, and if you notice on there too, there's a gray box that says substation. There would have to be another substation built for this facility, and it would be fed from the joint transmission system is what they call it, that sub. So it would have no effect on anything that we're doing right now.
Wouldn't raise my utility rates.
No, no.
I put a slide in here just really mentioning the ordinance that has to do with the impervious surface and the 62% that we're asking for in terms of the variance. That's the exhibit that's out of your ordinance that was referenced in the staff report. The user profile, I touched upon this a little bit a few moments ago. These are really AI, what they refer to as hyperscaler uses. They are large language model. I don't know how many of you follow the sector or have read different things on what these are, but these are large language model AI hyperscale projects. So what these things and what these computers and CPUs essentially do is when you go to ChatGPT, to give you a simplified example, ChatGPT, and ask it questions, and it runs through millions and millions of pages to kind of come up with that answer. It's learning. And though these models, and that requires a certain amount of power, a certain amount of the sophisticated CPUs to make that happen, and that's what these are primarily doing. Eventually they transform and they'll become more what we call inference models, which will essentially use that information to continue to, support other businesses and other uses. The other uses that could complement, the large language models would be just what we would think of as being cloud services, where companies would house things in the cloud. They could be cloud and AI data center type of services like that as well. But the primary use, at least initially and right now, is these what is referred to as large language models, LLMs. Again, I put this on there, and Don had mentioned it again also in the staff report. There is a perception that, as I've kind of gone around and been involved in a number of these, that these really are, empty, warehouse operations that really don't have any employees, but that's not really true. I would say some of the smaller ones that are what we refer to as enterprise solutions, which use a lot less power. You may be 15,000, 10,000 square feet. Those don't have quite as many, but these projects are staffed with essentially engineers. I mean, they are electrical engineers, they're IT engineers, they're operation groups. We have run some different scenarios from some different labor companies and have come up with average employee wages of close to $100,000 a position. So they're significant jobs, and that's when I say you could look at these from the standpoint of being almost like the modern office building. I'm just using that as an analogy because it's pulling significant type of brain power really to the community. And then there's a lot of temporary jobs, and that could be architects, engineers, the construction. It also could be, which could last several years, the completion of these racks, because when you put the buildings in, then these racks are more sophisticated and a little more complex than even like distribution racking. So they'll come in and set the racks in place, and depending on what kind of system they use to cool them, those need to be connected and interconnected, and so they kind of take some time to build that out. So meanwhile, those people are coming in, they're technically, temporary jobs, probably from a classification standpoint, but I would tell you they're probably working there for several years as they kind of fit out the space. So, we think that the job component of it is significant. The city of Frankfurt, I think the city of Frankfurt is really well positioned for this type of development. Wonderful to work with just on a personal level, but also the infrastructure is good for this type of development. this is a great area to do it. But one of the other things that we like about this area is it is close to some things happening around some of the adjacent communities and the area in general that I think will work over the coming years to benefit the city. And if you look at the things that are going on I-65, if you look at the technology corridor, the LEAP corridor there, if you continue to go up to Purdue University, those are all areas that, you know, once the operator that comes in here and looks at this will be looking at those as sources to be able to pull some of these engineering and higher skilled labor from. So we think it's well positioned, and we think it's going to be a much added benefit and attraction for the community here. I even think, I mean, I go for it. It'll be a game changer for this area. I mean, the sophistication of it is it's pretty amazing. This you can read. It's a lot to read from the presentation, but it's in your manual as well. There's just some popular quotes from some people. Again, just kind of impressing upon, you know, where the industry is going. You know, obviously these are, you know, these data centers and similar projects are popping up all over the country. We think that there's significant runway to that effort, that there'll continue to be a shift and a need for, you know, data consumption. So we think there's a continued need for labor, and we think labor will come into play a lot more, which is, again, I can go back to, we like this location because of its proximity to labor. We like its proximity to town. We like its proximity to, you know, some of the areas and the amenities. So we're excited about the opportunity and excited to bring it to Frankfurt. And that's really it, and happy to answer any of the questions that you had about the project or the industry.
You did good at answering my questions. I appreciate that.
Okay, yep, absolutely. The what? Yeah, as part of this, we've offered to contribute a few acres of land to the city of Frankfurt for them to develop a substation, which is added infrastructure that will support future manufacturing growth and other uses in the city. So again, that's an added benefit that we, you know, that I think the city can enjoy, you know, as a result of this. And I think that'll certainly be beneficial as, you know, we look even at some of the manufacturing and different uses that we see out in the community and in the market in the country today, so.
Michael, all great questions. I just want to add the fact that before this project would get to any of our boards, whether it be the Plan Commission or this board, it's going to go through the Economic Development Group. It would be Shan Sheridan and his group. It would be Todd would be part of that. So most of the, oh, not most, all of the utility questions or any use on whether or not this would be an ideal thing for this community would have gone through that committee before it would have came here. So any of the questions about whether or not it would be an overuse of water or whether or not we would be able to electrically supply it, all those questions would have been answered at that meeting. I'm sure that maybe the mayor was involved in it along with commissioners, just to verify that this project was kind of an okay to come to this point. The reason why we have the special meeting is so that they can continue the process, and that we're not holding up the program as far as the advancement of this project. But a lot of the questions that you asked would have been taken care of in that meeting, but they were good questions to ask, and I'm glad that everybody was here to get them answered, taken care of. So if there are no other questions, Mr. President, it's in your hands.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen. It was very thoughtful. Some good key points of benefits that we went over. At this time, I'd like to open. Do we have any additional questions from the public? All right, hearing none, we will have any final discussions from the board. I do have one question. Maybe I misunderstood. Why would the airport need to approve this over the utilities board?
Because this would be in the airport overlay district, and if containment of water or height of buildings come into play, they would have to go and have that okayed by the airport authority.
Okay, and is this in still some way so in conjunction with the utilities board as well, or?
It would not. I'm
Okay.
I'm guessing as far as the utility side of things, That got cleared with Todd and the utility side
Okay.
to make sure that everything that would be required to make this action go in place was there. If not, then we probably wouldn't have been here this evening.
Okay, just,
Yep.
yes, Todd?
The reason on the airport, if there's anything that's holding water, they're concerned with the number of geese. that you
Yep.
get.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah, it's,
I wanted to make sure we're on the same page and that you guys weren't getting any kind of curveball.
no, this has to do with geese and them hanging around. I can tell you that ADM over a year ago built a pond. They were going to have it as in a holding pond, actually holding water, and the airport denied that. They had to make it a retention pond where there were only a certain amount of water, not enough to attract the geese to their facility. So they had to restructure their whole pond system to make it work and make it come into compliance with the airport.
Okay.
Mike, I think you can help with this a little bit. You're still on the airport board. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's in that ordinance, it's 10,000 feet from the edge
Oh,
of
I
the airport.
couldn't tell you that, Sam.
Well,
I don't
I
remember.
think I read where it said 10,000 feet. So if you go 10,000 feet out from the airport runway,
Well,
it's more than a mile.
I'd have to look at it, and maybe we get Liz involved in it, of course, to do a look at the zoning, what do you call it? Yeah. I
The
don't-
zone-
but
airport overlay.
I couldn't quote that, Sam. You know, it hasn't, it's been that way for a while, so I don't know.
Well, it'll roll into the height of the building and water and
Stuff, yeah.
that's
all that
usually
stuff.
about most of their concerns. But this also could be in a pathway into the airport, so they're going to be pretty watchful of. But I don't think they're there yet as far as how they're going to do this water containment, whether it's just through a grassy facility that they have that has the ability to hold the water. Those designs will come down the line, and then that's when we'll send them either to the airport or not.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. I will now entertain a motion to the board.
I'll make the motion that we accept as Don's staff report reads.
Should we add pending of the airport?
I don't think so.
Will we need to include that, Alicia?
Yeah, we will.
You can include pending the airport authorities' approval. At this point, the proposal that they have put together doesn't have a specific, they may have a pond, they may not have a pond, so they may not need the airport's approval
That's right.
for that purpose if they aren't going to go that route. So I would probably approve it without that because they would have to get that approval in order to move forward regardless if it was needed.
And Alicia, shouldn't they do this separately, not both of them together?
Yes, I would do them independently, one for the
Special exception.
special exception and one for the
Developmental.
developmental standard. So to that point,
Special exception.
and that was to approve the,
Approve.
okay, thank you.
Okay, first, we get the second.
Second.
First and a second, we have roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Charles Bates,
Aye.
Sam Payne, Isaac Chavez.
Aye. We'll now entertain a motion for the developmental standard.
I'll make that motion to approve the developmental standards as written.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. We have roll call, please.
Mike Nichols,
Aye.
Scott Highlander,
Aye.
Charles Bates,
Aye.
Sam Payne,
Aye.
Isaac Chavez.
Aye. Special exception and development standard passes.
I'd like to make a statement that if we're moving on to other business here, I guess.
We need to close the public hearing.
Oh, pardon me.
We, did I close? I thought I closed it before we opened board discussion, but for the record, public hearing is closed.
Can I make a statement, or now, or?
Moving on to any old business, sure, Mike.
Okay. This is last Easter, or last week, and my son came down from Chicago to visit. My son is a computer scientist, and he works for a large company and all that kind of stuff, and he kind of specializes in AI, okay? So I was, since I got this paperwork last week, I asked him, I said, what do you think ChatGPT thinks of this program? And he says, well, I don't know, give me the specifics, Dad, and I'll run it. I had only the information that was given to me, which would hear, and I have, and he ran it through ChatGPT. Took Chat 15 minutes to run it. Okay, so it's a significant report. It's 14 pages long, and I have a copy of that, and I have multiple copies of that. I'd be glad to give you guys a copy of it. I want to give one to the mayor, of course. And this has, the question is the economic impact assessment for this data center, okay, based on, like I say, what we have. And it goes through the whole thing. It's got all, if you know about ChatGPT, it does a great job of all its references and so forth and so on. I think it'd be really important for our community to look at this because as it starts off, or as it resolves at the end, this can be a good deal for us or a bad deal for us. And it all depends. It all depends on what kind of rebates, what kind of property rebates you guys want, what you will do for the community, what you won't do for the community. Whether this is a lot of money to spend for jobs. I forget the statistics in here. It's like $6 million for every single job this creates, and it talks about the loss of investment potentially. This 117 acres out in the industrial park could make a lot more money for the community in property taxes, so forth. Anyway, it evaluates this whole thing. I think it's very interesting, and I'd be glad to give everybody a copy. And like I said, even including you guys. And I don't think, Don, I know you made a statement that there was a big meeting and everybody knew about this bullshit. Everybody knew about this thing, but I don't think everybody knows about this thing enough. I don't think the decisions. I think the decision to do this needs to be looked at from the city's point of view a lot harder with regard to the economic impact, whether it's good for us or bad for us. And like I said, I hope this guidance would help people, but I don't think the decision's been made. And I'm hoping it hasn't been made, because if it's made, it's too late. But hopefully the decision hasn't been made to do this without having... like, for example, it mentions safeguards. These guys, it's all in there. But, for example, they say 250 jobs, long-term jobs, 1,000 jobs, temporary. Okay. What are you guaranteeing? Are you guaranteeing 250 jobs, or are you guaranteeing 400 jobs? Or you know, it's got to be nailed down in many. That's just one respect. But this is all addressed in here, and I can't speak for this, but ChatGPT does a nice job around it. And they got all the references where it's all from. They talk about all the examples in Indiana, Lebanon, for example. They talk about other like-sized cities up northern Indiana and Hammond. They talk about this, they talk about that, and all the pitfalls, the good points, the bad points, and what we need to watch out for. And we need to get our people with these people and negotiate this to where it's good for everybody. That's all I'm saying.
And if that's the case, then that'll be done by Shan Sheridan and the economic group, the mayor, the commissioners. They'll have all those discussions. But when you talk about, you know, negotiating and saying what will you get, what will we won't get, let's just take this property that they've purchased or are planning to purchase if this program moves forward. That property was supposed to have been part of a Con-Ag expansion that was supposed to have occurred when they put their project in, and as you can see, that isn't happening. So I guess you can say, you can talk about all of the things that could come from a project, and as it moves forward, it may happen, it may not happen, but you know, those are negotiations done by other groups. And I'm very thankful that you took the time out this evening for the special session to grant our side of things and allow them to move forward with the continued negotiation or discussion of this project. I'm sure that it's probably not quite there, but it's probably knocking at the door right now. So, but this is just part of the section that allows them to continue their discussion and moving this project forward. If you would have turned it down, that would have put a kibosh to it all, and they probably wouldn't even have had any further discussion with anybody. But I'm sure that this will still continue on. Don't know when, where, or how, but that will be in the hands of Shan Sheridan and his economic group.
I just want to make sure to get this to them, that's all.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. And like I said, I'll give you guys a couple too.
Don, do you have any other old business for us?
I do not. I was trying to think of anything coming next month. What do we have? Grace, you're better at remembering than I am. I've got a lot of water in the bridge, under the bridge.
It's a special exception to allow the accessory structure without a principal building and a B residential district.
So that'll be coming. We've eliminated, there was another empty lot that somebody wanted to put a duplex on. I told them that that would not go through here with all the requirements that are necessary. So they're moving that towards the Plan Commission. I don't expect it to pass there either, but you know, they have the right to move forward on trying to make their project work. So we're going to do what we can. Yeah, we'll have that coming to you here in a couple of weeks, and the information for that will be coming your way very soon. Other than that, Mr. President, that's all we have.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Call for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn tonight's meeting.
A second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. I was trying to think back of how I said that. And I think once I opened it, I think I just wanted to say.